morning, everybody. You guys already know who it is. Your boy Bobby from Mentourme.com. People, it's important to understand tonight, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., I'm teaching you how to trade in the stock market. Live webinar. Make sure you are on that webinar, elevating your mind, learning the tools of trading in the stock market. As you guys know, I'm a life coach. I'm an investor. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an opportunist. I've done a lot of different things. I've sold businesses. My goal is to always teach you how to create financial wealth. Today, I want to take time to focus on the high schoolers. This whole week, I'm focusing strictly on high schoolers, teaching them how to, of course, win financially. It's important to understand this week is called High School Financial Literacy Week. Today, we're going to first start talking with the first topic of discussion, which is credit. It's important to understand, kids, that credit is more valuable than cash. We're programmed to believe that as long as you have, hypothetically, I don't know, $10,000 saved, you are financially free. That is not true. At the end of the day, $10,000 can't buy everything. But imagine you had a credit limit of $1 million or a credit score of 850. You could leverage by using other people's money to make money. That's how wealthy people get rich, using other people's money to make money to eventually buy or invest into whatever it is that you want to invest to. But it's important to understand, how does credit work? First and foremost, you need 3 lines of credit, okay? 3 lines of credit just simply means 3 credit cards. I want parents and kids to understand this. You do not need to put your kids in a whole bunch of car debt just to build credit. There's a misperception that in order to build credit, you need to finance an expensive car. That is not true. At the end of the day, sometimes you have to finance because, again, you can't afford a car cash. But if you are a parent that could buy a child a car cash, why not buy that child a car cash and add what we call extended warranty to that vehicle, even if it's a used vehicle? There's a lot of external companies that exist that will give you what we call outside warranty, external warranty. A lot of you don't realize that you're teaching these kids that credit is not important. You as a parent sometimes need to also understand that you could add your kids to your credit limit or credit account from the age of 15 to 16. It's important that you should teach the child that there's 3 lines of credit that they need, okay? And it does not have to be a car burden. A lot of you are teaching these kids go in a whole bunch of debt when you're in high school by giving them this expensive car that eventually, when they finish paying it off in 3 to 5 years, that's going to be worth 30% of what they really paid for it. What are you really teaching them? Why are you making them have to go to work and work 2 jobs because of a decision you made? If you could buy a car cash and it's cheap, and it's inexpensive, let's just say, do that. A child's first car does not have to be the best car in the world. It needs to be affordable. It needs to be something that's reliable. Number 2, it's important to understand, kids, when you're building your credit, don't use more than 30%. So if the credit line on the card is $1,000, don't use more than $300. If the credit line on the card is, let's say, $5,000, don't use more than $1,500. Number 3, it's important to understand, kids, when you're building credit, increase your credit limits. Every 6 months, you should be calling or probably doing it online to increase your credit limits. So hypothetically, you have a credit card that have $1,000. 30% is what Bobby said not to use, which is, of course, $300. Then he said also, of course, increase your credit limits. Why is that important? Because, again, imagine you run into an emergency. Think of your credit cards like a tool belt. Imagine you run into an emergency and you need to use one of your tools. And your credit card only has $1,000 on it, and you can only use 30%, which is $300. And the problem you have is a $2,000 problem. You can't, of course, fix that problem because your credit limits are too low. So I always tell people, increase your credit limits, because why? Imagine you increase your credit limits once a year every year, or twice a year every year for the next 5 years. Within, of course, once you get to like the age of, let's say, 21 or 22, you got to realize that here's how life is going to be sweet. You're going to have credit limits on your credit cards that's $50,000, $100,000. What's 30% of $100,000? That's $30,000. It's important to understand that we need to change our approach to life of how we educate kids, because kids believe that cash is more valuable than credit, and it's not. Kids don't understand the truth about life is that when you go to college and you have a roommate, that's just a roommate. At the end of the day, it's important to understand the transition to buying a condo or buying a house, because the money you waste renting condos and renting apartments, you could own a piece of property. But one of the tools you need to be able to own a piece of property is, of course, good credit. Parents, it's important to take time. It's imperative that we take time to teach kids about what is credit. Why do you need credit? How do you leverage credit? And some of the best cards to have, of course, is Bank of America Visa, Discover, American Express. The highest score you could have, of course, is an 850. Now, I realize that there's grown adults that have scores of 500, 400. How are you going to teach your kid how to have good credit when you don't have good credit? That's why it's also important for parents to take time to learn what is good credit and why do you need it. Because the reality is these kids are growing up in a world where they have no credit because parents didn't put them on their account. Kids are misguided because parents never take time to teach kids how credit works and what is good credit. And kids don't understand that credit is more valuable than cash. At the end of the day, a lot of people that's getting wealthier in this world is because they have credit, they have leverage. It's not that they're using all of their cash. The reality is our kids need to understand the truth that you could win in this world and you could be the best you, but you got to do what the best are doing, which is understanding how credit works. You don't have to be in debt for a car to have good credit. You don't need to build credit with debt that's not valuable, which is depreciating debt, which is a car, an expensive car. You could build credit by simply, of course, getting on your parents' account. You could build credit by simply getting on creditkarma.com and getting maybe 2 or 3 credit cards and starting there. Don't forget, don't use more than 30%. And every year, call the back of the card on the 1-800 number or go on whatever the website is and increase your credit limits. Remember, you cannot afford everything when you have cash. But when you have leverage in other people's money, which is credit, the sky's the limit. The sky's the limit. Think about that, people. Mentourme.com.